recording. So Hare Krishna, everyone. Good evening and welcome back to our Gita Gyan level 2. So we are continuing with our Gita Mahatmya. So we will begin with these prayers. Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimhaiti Namine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayatim Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanyam Ishwaram Om Tat Sat. So Hare Krishna everyone. So happy belated Janmashtami celebrations and happy Srila Prabhupada Vyasa Puja Tithi as well. So the next celebration to look forward to will be Radhastami, the appearance of Srimati Radharani. So in ISKCON, the grandest celebration would be we do the grandest Janmashtami celebration in Malaysia and in the whole world actually. And on top of that, then there's Gaura Purnima. And of course, Srila Prabhupada's appearance is also a very big celebration. And we also have Radhastami. Radhastami is more of a, it's not so much of a public celebration, but still it is a public celebration, but it's not in the same, it's very different, the mood. It's a very sweet mood. Especially if you are celebrating Radhastami in the temple, it's a very, very slightly different mood. Anyway, we will talk about Radhastami later on when it comes. It's about a few weeks before it comes. And then after that, Kartik will begin. And then the entire Kartik month, Damodar month, then Deepavali, and like that. There are many, many festivals coming. So, right. So let's continue with Gita Mahatmya from the Padma Purana, Uttarakanda. So here, Lord Shiva is recounting the conversation that took place between Lord Vishnu and Lakshmi Devi to Parvati, Mother Parvati. So she says, Shiva says to Gauri, Sri Vishnu said, now I will tell you the glories of the 6th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And there Vishnu says, whoever hears this description with faith will be liberated from the material world. So many of the stories began with the place where we started with the river. So same thing this time also. We begin with the Godavari River. So here I'm putting a map of the Godavari River. So you can see it starts from Brahmagiri. So Brahmagiri is somewhere in the Himalayas. There are several places where it begins. One is in Nasik, and then like that, the Brahmagiri is the main tributary. So like that, it passes through Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and eventually it empties in the Bay of Bengal, the Bengal Ocean, Bengal Sea. So Lord Shiva is telling the story. So once in Pratishtanpur is in Uttar Pradesh, somewhere above Maharashtra, this side. And that is currently, that city is a very ancient city, Pratishtanpur. So nowadays it's called Jhansi. The name has been changed. Of course, many hundreds of years, thousands of years have passed. Now it's Jhansi. It's somewhere near Prayag. Prayag is the place where the 3 rivers meet. So on the bank of the Godavari River is a beautiful town of the name Pratishtanpur. Sometimes it's also called Paitan for short. Where I am, so Lord Shiva is saying, he's telling the story, where I am famous by the name of Pipaleshwar. Pipaleshwar means Lord and protector of the great sage Pippalada. So therefore he's called Pipaleshwar. So that temple is no longer there, as far as I know, but just showing you the picture of a temple. So this is a very famous area of the Godavari River. And in this place, in those days, there lived a king in this town of Tripalash, what do you call that? What's the name of the town? Pratishtanpur, yes. In the name of the town Pratishtanpur, there was a king. So this king's name is Jan Shruti. Jan Shruti. And he was a very righteous king, a very saintly king. He was following the scriptures very nicely. He was very well advised by his Brahminical advisors. And he used to do a lot of welfare activities and all that. So the people loved him very, very much. So notable about him is he used to perform daily fire sacrifices. So these fire sacrifices were in respect to the what do you call, the scriptures. And he will engage every day Brahmanas to come and perform fire sacrifices very opulently. And then he will sponsor them, and then he will take care of them. And in this way, he will perform these sacrifices for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. In fact, he was so diligent in performing the sacrifices, it seems, and so perfectly he used to perform them. And they were so opulent, so many fire sacrifices, that it is said the smoke from those fire sacrifices would even reach the heavenly pleasure gardens known as Nidavan. So in heaven, there are many different pleasure gardens, and this smoke would even reach there, right? And it would, and those trees would appear to be shrouded in this smoke. So as a result, because these sacrifices are being performed, part of the ritual of the sacrifices, one has to give lots of charity. So charity to the Brahmana is given, and all this is being done. Just a moment. Please don't mind if I mute you. Okay. All right. So, right. as a result of these sacrifices, right, the Devatas were very, very pleased. So, in the Devatas in chapter 3, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, right, perform these sacrifices, and then as a result, the Devatas will be very pleased and they will provide with all necessities for living a happy life in this material world. So therefore, one has to perform sacrifice. So sacrifice in those days used to be, you collect everything, whatever that's produced of the land, and offer it as an oblation into the fire together with ghee. And in this way, they please the Lord. So everything is offered to the Lord first before they enjoy the fruits. So that was the idea. So because of this activity being performed very nicely, the Devatas are very pleased, and as a result, they provided plenty of rain. So there will be lots of rain, and these rains would in turn give rise to very nice harvest, very nice harvest. There was lots of different crops, vegetables, and the earth was producing so much of abundance that everybody was very happy. All their requirements and needs were fully, taken care of. It is said that rain, even the rain, it will come at the right time only. It won't come at the wrong time. So what is considered the right time according to Vedic scriptures? So it says that it will come at night. So, when people are sleeping, it's nice, isn't it, when it rains at night, when we are going to sleep. So like that, it would rain only at night. It will not rain at any other time. So perfect timing. And this is all due to the wonderful observance of King Janashruti, because he was taking care of all these scriptural sacrifices very nicely. He was performing sacrifices for the pleasure of the Lord. And somehow it is said that not only the crops would be growing, in fact, there was no pest within that kingdom. It seems the fields were all full of crops and they were not disturbed by any kinds of pestilence or disease. And the people were all very blissful and happy. There was hardly any disease, and everybody was very satisfied. So all this was described by Lord Shiva due to the pious activities, performing the sacrifices and all that, until even the Devatas were completely satisfied. They were so satisfied that it's described that they would come periodically to this land and they will come to bless him in the form of birds. They will actually take the form of birds, and in this way, like especially they will take forms of swans, auspicious birds like that. They will fly over the kingdom, and then they will bless the citizens and they will bless the king for doing such wonderful such a wonderful duty. So the demigods being very pleased with Janashruti. So one day they were flying as a pack of swans, right? They were flying in the sky, and at that time, King Janashruti was standing at the balcony of his palace. So he was standing on the palace and he was looking at all these beautiful swans. And while it was happening, while the swans were flying, these were all Devatas taking the form, right? There was one Devata called Bhadrashva. He's a Deva and he's called Bhadrashva, and he was one of the leader of the swans. So he was flying separately and he was flying in front. He was flying ahead of the other swans and he was moving very much ahead of the rest. So at that time, some of the other Devatas who were in the form of the swans, they addressed this Bhadrashva. They said, "Oh brother, why are you flying ahead? Do you not see in front of you the great King Janashruti?" So out of respect and out of the Devatas being very pleased with this King Janashruti, they would not fly above his head directly. They would circle, they will go around him and they will fly off like that. So that was a bit of etiquette practiced by the Devatas. So then, but this particular swan, Bhadrashva, he flew ahead of him and just went away. So then the other swans were asking him, "Do you not see that the great King Janashruti is there, who is so powerful that he can just burn up his enemy simply by his desire?" So when Bhadrashva heard the words of the other swans, he started to laugh and said, "Oh brothers, is this king Janashruti as powerful as the great sage, Raikwa?" So there was a great sage called Raikwa, and this Bhadrashva was saying, "Yes, this Janashruti is very powerful, but I don't think he's as powerful as the great sage Raikwa." And after that, they all flew away. So after hearing now this King Janashruti, he had a very special ability. He was so pious. He was performing these sacrifices and all that very nicely. And he had received many blessings. And one of the blessings he received was that he was able to understand the language of all the animals within the kingdom. So as the birds, as the swans were flying above him, he was able to hear their conversation. So he could understand what the swan Bhadrashva was saying. And then when he heard about this king, this sage Raikwa, now a normal person, if they heard something like this, they would feel a little offended, isn't it? They would think that, oh, how is it someone greater than me, that person is better, they are offering respects to him rather than to me. So they would think like that. But King Bhadrashva was not such a king. He was a pious king. So when he heard another person being glorified, he immediately became very happy. He thought, oh, I must immediately meet this sage. Because although this King Bhadrashva was performing all the various sacrifices and everything, he was not fully satisfied in his heart. He was always thinking, there must be something higher, there must be something greater. So, but he was very renounced at the same time. So by performing all these sacrifices, he was very pious and he became very renounced also. But at the same time, he was always hankering, is there something higher to this? What is the highest goal of life? So he was thinking this way. And then when he heard about this sage, Raikwa, so he thought, must be the work of providence. You know, destiny is trying to show me a way. He's trying to answer my prayer. So therefore, I must search out this Raikwa, the great sage. It's not ordinary, I hear these kind of things, right? So therefore, he went back to his palace, into his throne room, and he was sitting and thinking about all these things, about what the swan said and everything. And then he summoned his charioteer. Now, he has a charioteer who is his very close friend. So he's a servant, but yet he was very close as a friend and a servant to this king, right? To this king. So this servant's name is called Maha the charioteer. So what happened is he called this Maha the charioteer to his palace, and then he told him what has happened, what he has heard about this swans telling about the sage Raikwa. But they do not know where the sage Raikwa is. So he told this Maha, can you please, you are an expert charioteer, why don't you go and search out the kingdom and even beyond the kingdom and try to find out about the sage called Raikwa. And then come and tell me, where is this sage? So this charioteer Maha also agreed, and he started to look. So he thought the first place he should go, if I'm looking for a holy person, I should go to Varanasi. So therefore he went to Varanasi, the kingdom of Kashipuri, where Sri Vishwanath resides, right? We have already talked about Kasi before in a previous story. So Lord Vishwanath is Lord Shiva, and there's a main temple there dedicated to Lord Shiva over there. So he traveled over there to Kasi, but he couldn't find anyone there who was fitting to the description of what the king told him about sage Raikwa. So then after Kashi, and giving his obeisances to all the deities there, then he left to Gaya. Now Gaya is somewhere in Bengal currently. And there's a very famous temple in Gaya. So this temple is, I'm showing you the picture of this temple. This is the temple of Sri Vishnupada temple. This Vishnupada temple is a very ancient and famous temple. Even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went there. And it is said that the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu's footprints on stone is captured over there. So, you know, the Lord stepped on the stone and he left his footprint over there, and it's worshipped until today. And it's a very wonderful temple to do pinda. Pinda means when people, their relatives or their forefathers leave their body. Once a year, they go there to perform, you know, the ceremonies for the passing rites. So like that, the funeral rites and the passing rites. So this is traditionally, and it's mentioned in the scriptures that this temple is especially for that particular ceremony. Anyway, he went there to Vishnupada temple, and in the Vishnupada temple there is this famous deity of Sri Gadadhara. So the story says that in this place, Gaya, Lord Vishnu received his, you know, Lord Vishnu has some weapons, right? There are all kinds of weapons. And he's famous for, of course, the Sudarshan disc. He's famous for that. But another weapon he's very famous for is the Gada. Gada means the mace, you know, the club, the mace which he carries in his hand. Chakra, Gada, Padma, Shankha, right? So chakra is the disc, Gada is the mace. So this Gada has a special name. It's called Kaumodaki Gada. So anyway, he received this Gada here, and this temple is famous for that. So therefore, he is called Gadadhara, the one who carries the mace. So, and he went to this temple, he took darshan of this temple, but he could not find the sage Raikwa over there in that temple. But by the blessings of Gadadhar, so somehow he was in his heart, he was guided to the next place. He went to Mathura. Mathura is in also somewhere near Uttar Pradesh. Is in Uttar Pradesh. You know, Mathura is a very famous area. Mathura is where Lord Krishna took his birth, right, in the prison house of Kamsa. So like that, there is the prison house is still there. It's a temple now, and then that small prison chamber of Kamsa is still there in that place, Mathura, 5,000 years ago. So like that, and after travel, when he went to Mathura, he traveled to various places in Mathura. Mathura is full of different beautiful temples. It said that in Mathura is Vrindavan also. Vrindavan is the beautiful forest where Krishna spent his childhood pastimes. So it is said that in Vrindavan itself, there are about 5,000 temples. And every single place in Mathura and Vrindavan is a holy place. Every speck of dust, because Lord Krishna personally danced and played, and in fact, many holy places in Mathura and Vrindavan. So the picture I'm showing you here is Keshi Ghat. Keshi Ghat is this is the river Yamuna, dark waters of the Yamuna, and Keshi Ghat. Ghat means bathing place. So this is where Lord Krishna, after killing the Kesi demon, Kesi is the horse demon. There was a horse demon. So he killed many demons, you know. So like that, the horse demon is called Kesi. After killing the Kesi demon, he became known as Kesini Sudana. So the one who killed the Kesi demon. And he went to this ghat, this bathing place, and he bathed over there. So like that. So this ghat is still there. It's very famous. So after having traveled to all these holy places, which are capable of destroying all of one's sins, because it is the place where the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna resides eternally. Vrindavan is special because it is not another ordinary tirtha. It is actually the spiritual world itself, which is reproduced in the material world. So it's like, this is called Dham. Dham is different from tirtha. Holy places are called tirthas, right? But Dham is like the home of the Lord, which is reproduced in this material world. So tirthas are like stations, stations for us to go to the spiritual world. But the dham is actually the spiritual world itself, which is reproduced in this material world. So we cannot see the dham with our eyes until we can go there. We can take a flight ticket and all that. We can go to these places. But one cannot see these dhams. The real vision of the dham cannot be seen with our eyes, just like that. Because we need to have treatment on the eyes. So the eyes need to be treated with the salve of love for God. Then only we can really see the dham. And how is this done? So Prabhupada says, we see the dham through our ears. We don't see through the eyes. We see through the ears. So by hearing Shravanam, we hear about the holy places, we hear about the dhams, we hear about the glories, we hear about the devotees who lived in the dham, we hear about the pastimes of the Lord in these holy places. And in this way, our hearts become purified. And as our hearts become purified, our eyes become tinged with the salve of love of God. So then we will be able to see the real Vrindavan or the real Mathura or the real Holy Dham. So anyway, so therefore, and there are, this Maha, the charioteer, he could not see the real Dham. He went there, he went searching in Mathura, and then he also went searching in Govardhan, near Mathura, there's the Vrindavan forest. And in Vrindavan forest, there's the Govardhan hill. Govardhan hill is the hill that Krishna lifted with his left hand with his little pinky finger. And he held it over him like an umbrella for 7 days and 7 nights against the rain which was given by Lord Indra. So it's a very nice pastime, that one. So anyway, the hill is still there, Govardhan Hill. See, I can show you this picture. Here is the Govardhan Hill. So like that, this Maha, the charioteer, he went to all these places and he took darshan of them. And then he also went to other places in Vrindavan, right? Vrindavan is surrounded by pure trees. It is said that every stone in Vrindavan is a Chintamani stone. Chintamani means wish-fulfilling jewel. Every stone and pebble there is a wish-fulfilling jewel. And every tree in Vrindavan is a Kalpa Vriksha. Kalpa Vriksha means a desire-fulfilling tree. Can you imagine? So this is the nature of the spiritual world. So for those who are purified in their vision and in their hearts, they will be able to see this real vision of the real Vrindavan. So it is said there is 12 forests in Vrindavan, right? There's Talavan, Vanavan, Mahavan, what else? So like that, there are different, one means forest. There are 12 different forests in Vrindavan, where Krishna and Radharani and the gopis and the gopas with all the cows, they used to go every day, and they used to play and enjoy and go through the different rivers. And then they used to kill the demons who used to come there. So very, very many beautiful pastimes of the Lord are described. So this is where our Sanatana Dharma is very wonderful. Because nowhere else, in no other religion, is God described so beautifully. Most religions don't even know who is God. They just know there is God, but they do not know his name also. And they don't even know, if they know his name, they don't know how he looks like. If they know how he looks like, they do not know what he does. And you know what God does in his pastime? God is so wonderful. What does he do? God doesn't do work, right? Otherwise, he's God. So he has his energies and his expansions to do his work, maintenance, creation, and everything. So what he does, he constantly spends his time with his devotees, sporting many, many beautiful eternal pastimes called Leelas. Right? Leelas are the pastimes of the Lord. So this kind of information is very beautifully described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's why we say Bhagavad Gita is the manual instruction given by the Lord for us, and Srimad Bhagavatam is full of descriptions about the Supreme Lord what he does, what is his pastimes, what is his personality, about his devotees, about the holy places. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the full description. So one can relish unlimited rasa from hearing these pastimes constantly throughout his life. So anyway, this Maha, the charioteer, he went through all these places and he went through this Vrindavan pastimes and everything. And after being purified so much by Vrindavan, he could not see the real Vrindavan because he did not have bhakti in his heart. But he was reverential and he went there with a reverential bent of mind. And he was, in this way, he was able to get Agyata Sukruti. And eventually, this Maha, his heart guided him to this place, which is somewhere in the Himalayas. It's called Kashmir. So even then it was called Kashmir, the ancient city of Kashmir, the ancient land of Kashmir. So in which he saw a very large and shining white palace. So there's a shining white palace there he saw in the midst of Kashmir. And it was so beautiful that it would look like it was always covered with mist. So it said that all the people there, even the foolish people there, they all looked very beautiful, like demigods, due to the fact because there were many sacrificial fires which were burning continuously. So just like the earlier king which I mentioned, right here, this king in Kashmir was also performing lots of sacrifices according to scripture. So in this way, he entered the town. Now Kashmir is a very famous land of Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva is very much glorified, right? In fact, Kashmir is known as the land of Lord Shiva. So ancient times, there are lots of temples of Mahadev. So nowadays, not so many. Many of them have been broken and time has changed and everything. So there was one beautiful temple which was called, where Lord Shiva was worshipped there. And his name was Manikeshwara. Manikeshwara. So that temple is no longer there now. But anyway, so this deity of Lord Shiva was worshipped there very nicely. And the king of Kashmir, he had just returned after defeating many other kings. And he came back to Kashmir and he was engaged in worshipping Lord Shiva in this temple as Manikeshwara. So because he was such a great devotee of Manikeshwara, he also became called as Manikeshwara. So the king also was given the name Manikeshwara because he was like the representative of Lord Shiva there. So in this temple of Manikeshwara, somehow this Maha, the charioteer, he was guided in his heart to go to this temple. So after a long search, if you remember where he went to Kasi, then he went to Gaya, then he went to Mathura, Vrindavan, and then now finally he came to Kashmir. And in this temple, there was a tree nearby, right? A small cart and a tree nearby. And under the tree, he saw a great effulgent personality sitting under the tree and chanting. So Maha immediately felt within his heart that this must be the great sage Raikwa. And he immediately fell at his feet and inquired from him, "O great sage, please tell me who you are and where do you stay? You are such a highly elevated person. Please tell me your purpose here." So in this way, he was saying sweet words. He was giving sweet words to the sage Raikwa. But this sage Raikwa, he was not really moved. He was very unmoved by the enthusiastic words of Maha. He was just looking at Maha. He looked completely at peace, completely satisfied. And then he opened his eyes from his contemplation and his chanting. And then he replied, he thought for a while, and then he replied in a grave voice. So to all the things that this Maha charioteer said to this sage, Raikwa, his reply was, this was his reply, "I am indeed Raikwa, and I am fully satisfied. I do not need anything." This was his response to Maha. So this response sounds very mysterious, right? So therefore, he acknowledges his Raikwa, and then after that, like as if he knows what is going to happen, this Raikwa says these words: "I am fully satisfied. I do not need anything." And then he kept silent and continued his chanting. So then this Maha, after hearing this, he became very pleased in his heart. He thought, this is the sage. He acknowledges that he is Raikwa. My mission is accomplished. So let me go back and return to my king. So he went back to his king, the king, Janashruti. So he returned back to his king after a long travel, and he told the king, I found this great sage Raikwa, as you have asked me to, and he's staying in Kashmir. So then this king, Janashruti, he became very happy, and he thought, my mission is accomplished. Immediately, he organized his kingdom, and then he left in a huge procession, and with him, he brought nice, lots of jewelry. He brought costly silk and costly blankets and nice food stuff and all kinds of auspicious and opulent things with him to give as a gift. So he went, and after a long journey, he came to this temple, and over there, he met the sage Raikwa. And then he offered his obeisances to this sage Raikwa, and then he offered all these things. He offered the silks, the jewels, and the gold, and all that to this sage Raikwa. Now, when Raikwa opened his eyes and saw all of this, he became, upset. So he became angry. He said, I thought I told you that I do not need anything, that I am fully satisfied, that I am not in need of anything. So please take all these things with you and take them with you in your chariot and leave this place. So when the king heard this, he felt, he felt like very disappointed. He thought, no, but at the same time, his faith was very strong. He knows that, no, you are the person. This sage is testing me. Yes, I am foolish. So the king acknowledged his foolishness. He said, I am just a materialistic king. I do not know what is the goal of life. And then he immediately, with great devotion, he fell at the feet of Raikwa and begged his forgiveness, and then asked him to be merciful upon him. He said, please, O sage, I am just a materialistic fool. He called himself a fool with no knowledge of the self. Please be merciful to me and tell me how you attained such a high state of renunciation. So here, the sage Raikwa was sitting under a tree in the cold winter, under the snow, and without even proper blanket and everything. And he was completely peaceful, and he was happily chanting something constantly. So when the king saw this, he said, you are the teacher that I have always been looking for. I see in you the happiness and satisfaction which you have, which far eclipses whatever happiness and satisfaction I have by me performing all the fire sacrifices. Even the devatas are coming to visit me, and so many wonderful things my kingdom is flourishing with, but I do not feel the same satisfaction that you are experiencing. Please instruct me as your disciple. So in this way, the king humbly begged for the mercy of the sage Raikwa. Then the sage Raikwa became very pleased. What he became pleased with? He became pleased with the attitude of the king. He became pleased with the king's humility and the king's determination to understand the supreme truth. So then Raikwa told the king, I have gone through so many austerities. I have gone through so many penances. I have done so much of meditation and everything else I have done. But do you know what is my realization at the end? My realization at the end is that if one can simply surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna, then that is the ultimate realization. So then he says, what I do is, I recite the beautiful verses of the 6th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So this is what I recite every day. And by reciting like this every day, I have attained such a level of perfection, which I have not felt possible, even with my meditation. So after that, King Janashruti heard from Raikwa, the sage, and then together he was instructed in this chanting of the 6th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So in this way, he became his student and he stayed. So the sage told the king, stay, give up your kingdom, give up everything else and remain with me, and I will teach you the same verses by which you will be completely perfect. And thereafter, you will attain the ultimate goal of the lotus feet of the Lord. So this sage, this king, Janashruti, he thought, yes, my life's desire is attained. After so long, after so many performances of sacrifices and so many different things, I have finally attained a guru who is able to give me the highest goal of life. So then he thought, my kingdom is not a problem. I already have wonderful qualified sons who will take care of the kingdom, who will be, I'm also getting old, so I will give up. So therefore he gave up everything and he took instructions. He became a Siksha, disciple of this Raikwa sage, and he became initiated in the chanting of the Bhagavad Gita. And in this way, he recited the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And when he left his body, it was said that a beautiful flower aeroplane came. So they were chanting the Bhagavad Gita chapter 6. It was said, Lord Shiva says to Vada Gauri, concluding the story, in the course of time, a flower aeroplane arrived and took him to Vaikuntha. So Pushpaka Vimana. Vimana means it's like a aircraft, and Pushpaka, flower. So Pushpaka Vimana came and brought him to Vaikuntha. Meanwhile, the great sage, Raikwa, who was reciting the 6th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita daily, he also went to the Supreme Lord, and where he received a very wonderful service. He became engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Supreme Sri Vishnu. So just like Lakshmi Devi, in some capacity, he was also directly engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So in this way, Lord Shiva concludes his pastimes of the glory of the Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, and that ends the Gita Mahatmya of chapter 6. So chapter 6 is entitled Dhyana Yoga. So if you remember, 2 parts were instructed by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita about yoga. So yoga, there are 2 paths to yoga. One path is the gradual path, which is, starting with Karma Yoga and then moving on to Jnana Yoga. And then from Jnana Yoga, one moves on to Dhyana Yoga. And then from Dhyana Yoga, one moves to Bhakti Yoga. So this is a gradual elevation. It takes time. So just like the king, you see, the king, he was performing Karma Yoga. So he was performing all the sacrifices very nicely. He was starting to become renounced, right? Very easy for him to renounce also. And he was giving all the fruits for the pleasure of the Lord. He was performing sacrifices, isn't it? So he was doing his duty, but taking all the fruits and providing it for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. So in this way, the Devatas were pleased by the sacrifices, and prosperity was seen throughout his kingdom, unparalleled prosperity. So that was Karma Yoga. So, but the whole idea, right? And where do we see this? In Bhagavad Gita, it is also described. Karma Yoga is described in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3. It starts with chapter 3, right? In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, so be thou happy by this yajna, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So there is always sacrifice. In different ages, there are different sacrifices. So in previous ages, right, we have meditation, And then in Dwapara Yuga, in Treta Yuga, it was fire sacrifices, like how King Janashruti was doing. And then in Dwapara Yuga, the sacrifice was the kings used to perform beautiful deity worship. They will erect beautiful temples of the Lord and have wonderful deity worship, where all the paraphernalia are collected from around the kingdom, costly jewels, costly all kinds of food stuff, the ghee and everything, and perform elaborate deity worship for the Lord. Abhishek for the Lord is being done. That is Dwapara Yuga. And they used to do this 5 times a day, 3 to 5 times a day, and the whole kingdom will take part in it, right? But in Kali Yuga, right, the sacrifice, the Yuga Dharma is amongst, Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, right, chapter 10, verse 9, amongst all sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy name. Yeah? Yajna Japosmi. So I Japo means Japa, chanting of the holy names. So therefore, right, if we perform our sacrifices, if one should perform one's duty as a sacrifice to the Supreme Lord for his pleasure. So when we do that, then that is Karma Yoga, right? We perform it for the pleasure of the Lord. That is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga is that particular aspect of Karma Yoga, performing our duty for the pleasure of the Lord. It is very much linked to Bhakti. So the difference between the Jnana path and Bhakti path here is, the Jnana path, they perform their duty simply for the sake of duty. That's it. Whereas the devotees perform their duty for the pleasure of the Lord. Then it becomes Bhakti Yoga. So anyway, so the Lord was the Janushruti king, he was performing sacrifices, right? And this was pleasing to the Lord. So in this way, all the necessities of life were automatically given to the king. So this is what we can understand also. If we perform our sacrifices, if we do it for the pleasure of the Lord, our duty properly, whether it is prosperous or not prosperous, we do it for the pleasure of the Lord, then the Lord is satisfied, and in the end, the fruit of our austerities and of our life, of our duties, will bear fruit, right? We will be able to develop bhakti or devotion for the pleasure of the Lord. At the same time, we will also get material prosperities, which is not really something which is interested by the devotees. The devotees are not really interested in the material prospect of it, but they do it simply for the pleasure of the Lord. So what happens if one performs sacrifices? So Bhagavad Gita 3:11, the demigods being pleased by sacrifices will also please you. And thus, by cooperation between men and devatas, prosperity will reign for all. So that's the lacking currently in this Kali Yuga nowadays. People are not really doing their duty for the sake of the pleasure of the Lord. They are not doing it as a sacrifice. Everybody is doing duties because they want to get something out of it. So it's being done for fruitive results. They want to enjoy. So it is based on desire, not based on pleasing the Lord. So that is the paradigm shift which we have to develop in our thinking. So when we do our duty for the pleasure of the Lord, it becomes spiritual activity. It no longer becomes a material activity. So even those days, people used to get married, they used to have children. It was all done as a duty for the pleasure of the Lord. One gets married, marriage is a duty. So it's part of the ashram. So in an ashram, grihastha ashram, one gets married. Getting married means responsible life. One takes up responsibility, right? Each one has a responsibility. The father has a responsibility, the mother has a responsibility. So in this way, each one has their duties. So by performing these duties very nicely, irrespective of whether the situation is good or bad. Krishna says, right, in chapter 2, Matras Parasastu Kaunteya Sitoshana Sukha Dukkada. Through happiness and distress, Just like, when rainy season comes or summer season comes, one continues to do their duty without being disturbed. So whether it is rain or sunshine, one does one's duty. So in this way, one becomes eligible for liberation. One becomes purified. What happens when one does duty like this? Whether it is happy or sad, one continues one's duty. They become eligible for liberation. It is said they become purified, especially even more so when they do it for the pleasure of the Lord. When they put that consciousness that way, then automatically they become like that. So in charge of various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, will supply all necessities to you. So this is the secret of prosperity in the world. How to achieve prosperity? One has to perform sacrifice. No pain, no gain, right? So why is like that? That is the rule of this material world. The Lord wants us to learn that this material world is not a place where we want to live permanently. So it is simply a means for us to purify ourselves. Prabhupada used to say, human life is meant for austerities. It is not meant for enjoyment, because if we want to enjoy, we can take animal life, right? A pig can enjoy eating more than us. A pigeon or a pig can enjoy sexual activity more than us. What else? A snake or a lion can defend better than us, right? And a grizzly bear can sleep better than us. They don't need all these elaborate arrangements. So if we wanted to only eat, sleep, mate, or defend, so then it's not really the purpose of human life. Human life is meant for austerities. So of course, some pleasure is there, it comes there, but the point is, the main purpose of life is for purification, so that we can go back, we can use this human life to end this cycle of birth and death. So anyway, so we saw in this story, this Gita Mahatmya story, how the king was he was performing karma kanda. He was performing fruitive activities, but at the same time, he was also performing sacrifices. So therefore, it's to understand that he was a karma yogi. But karma yogi was just one stage. Now, karma yogi must lead to, what is the next chapter after karma yoga? Chapter 4 is jnana yoga. So karma yogi, by performing these activities for the pleasure of the Lord, one becomes purified, and one's intelligence becomes purified, and one becomes fit to understand transcendental knowledge. So performing karma yoga will automatically must lead to jnana, knowledge. So the king, he had knowledge. So by performing so much, knowledge was given to him in the form of the swans. The swans were flying, and the devatas arranged for this knowledge to be given to the king, that he should search out for a guru so that he can get transcendental knowledge. The king was also already purified. He was, by performing all this, he became very renounced. So he was willing to leave the kingdom also. So we heard how, and the path of jnana, just to indicate also, this path of jnana is a very long path. How do we know it's a long path? Of course, Krishna says so in Bhagavad Gita, but in this Gita Mahatmya also, we can see how the charioteer Maha, he had to, so many places he had to go in search of this knowledge, right? He first went to Kashi. So that's also significant. Why Kashi first? Because Kashi, Kashi is usually full of people, full of the type of devotees who are dedicated towards Brahman realization. There are usually jnanis over there. A lot of jnanis live in Kashi. So, and they are all dedicated towards Brahman realization. So this Maha went to Kashi, but he did not find a sage of this kind of sage of such qualification living in Kashi at that time. So this is and then after the Kashi, he went to Gaya. So Brahman realization must eventually lead one to the understanding of Paramatma realization. That this Brahman or Jyoti or light has a source. And this source is the localized So there is a local source everywhere. In every human living entity and in every atom, there is a source of this Brahman. That's why all of this is Brahman. So this source is the Paramatma, right? So therefore, like that, he was brought to the lotus feet of Gadadhar, Sri Gadadhar in Gaya. So this is indicative of the lotus feet of the Lord is higher than Brahman. And then finally, it led him to Mathura. Now, Mathura is where the Lord, he was not simply present there, he took his pastimes. So in Mathura, one can understand that the Lord is not just a four-armed form or a statue, that's nothing. The Lord they can understand that this Lord, because Paramatma is like that, he's just inert. He doesn't really react. He doesn't really interact directly. He witnesses and he gives knowledge and all that to us. But there is no lila. There is no interaction as in rasa. There is no taste in the rasa. So therefore, they went to Mathura, and Mathura is the birthplace of the Lord. So we can understand the Lord is a person. Janma Karma Chame Divyam, chapter 4, Jnana Yoga gives the instruction that the Lord is a person. He is the ultimate abode of the Brahman and the source of the Paramatma. So it all comes from Bhagavan realization. So in Mathura, but this Maha, he went in all the places in Mathura, but he could not really see Mathura because he was not a yogi. So like that, there are many people who will go to Vrindavan or will go to these holy places and everything, but they could not understand. They cannot understand the glory of the Dham. They cannot understand the purification of the Dham. They do not know the pastimes of the Lord. So this is like people who go like tourists. So holy places is not to be meant to be like a tourist place. It's not like we buy a ticket and then we charter a bus or something and we just go and that's it. No, it doesn't work like that. If you want to get the real purification, right? The holy places, the dhams of the Lord, we should go in a yatra. Yatra means in the association and in the company of devotees. This Maha, the charioteer, he went alone. So he could not really understand the glory of Mathura, although he spent quite a lot of time there. He went to Vrindavan, he went to the Yamuna river, he went to Govardhan, but he could not really understand. So he left Mathura, you see. He did not, after coming to the highest Bhagavan realization land of Mathura, the highest dham in the material world, he left looking for devotees. He left looking for Raikwa. So this is also to understand that to see the dham, one has to be guided by devotees. To understand the pastimes of the Lord, one has to hear from the lips of the devotees of the Lord. So that is how it is. So then we also saw this long journey. So we can see how this jnana path is a very long journey. After going through all these places, then he went to Kashmir. So in Kashmir is Himalaya and everything. And usually the type of people who are in Kashmir and the Himalayas, they are the dhyanis. Dhyanis, chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, dhyanis. These are the meditating people. The devotees, the yogis who perform meditation, trying to understand the Paramatma. So this is beyond jnana. So Karma Yoga must lead to transcendental knowledge, jnana, which is giving one Brahman realization. But higher than that is it should lead one to Paramatma realization, which is the source of the Brahman is in the localized form of the Lord. They begin to see that the Lord has a form. So the jnanis are trying to meditate and they are trying to see this form of the Lord within their heart. So from here also, we can understand that this Raikwa, the sage Raikwa, he was the foremost of all the dhyana yogis there within the Kashmir. So you can see also, anyway, so this Raikwa, after going through all his austerities, his final realization was that to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord. So bhakti. So ultimately from jnana, it should lead to bhakti. So this is the understanding of this Gita Mahatmya chapter 6. And also we see the process of initiation, how it is important for this guru-disciple relationship to take place, how the disciple approaches the guru and is willing to give up whatever that he had before in order to serve his guru and to get his to get initiated and receive this transcendental knowledge. So this is a very important aspect also. Krishna himself says, right, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya. So one has to approach the spiritual master and serve the spiritual master humbly. And in this way, by serving, one becomes more purified and one understands the ultimate goal of life by the blessings of the spiritual master. So otherwise, it is not possible to get bhakti. Now, bhakti is different compared to the jnana path. In the jnana path, one can go from karma to jnana to dhyana step by step. But with bhakti, one completely depends on the mercy of the Lord. And the mercy of the Lord flows through the devotees of the Lord. So therefore, in order to get this bhakti seed, one has to somehow serve these pure devotees of the Lord and take instruction from them, and they can plant this bhakti seed in the heart. So we can see how the king Janashruti was able to perfect his life by taking advantage of this Raikwa sage, right? So therefore, let's look at chapter 6. Chapter 6 is these are the subtopics of chapter 6, right? So the true yogi, it begins with identifying who is the true yogi, because previously it talked about the false yogi, one who tries to meditate, but the renunciation hasn't come in his heart. So he's still remembering his material pastimes. So that is not a true yogi. So therefore the Lord says, don't artificially renounce. Otherwise, it is called Falgu Vairagya, false renunciation. So how to recognize the true yogi, right? So we have these verses. One can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. Now, is it easy to renounce the desire for sense gratification? It's not easy. So one may temporarily renounce it out of frustration, but that is just out of frustration. The moment things shine nicely, they will want to get it back again. It's just that because things are bad, so they say, okay, I want to leave the world, I want to go away. But the moment things become good again, they are happy to take it back up. So that is false renunciation. One has to genuinely renounce the desire to gratify one's senses. Now that is the jnana path. It's a very tough path, not easy to do. But the bhakti path is not like that. The bhakti path says you can get sense gratification. Sorry, you can renounce the desire for sense gratification by the mercy of the Lord. You don't have to artificially force yourself. I don't want to eat nice food. I don't want to do nice things. I want to only live like this in a very secluded place. No. The bhakti process is very nice because by attaching oneself to the higher taste, one can automatically leave the lower taste, right? So, it's like when, if you like, if someone gives you high quality ice cream and you are eating the low quality ice cream all the time. So when the high quality ice cream comes, you taste it and it becomes so nice, then you feel like, oh, this is real ice cream. So I can let go this other thing which is not good for me. So like that, they can renounce because they have already got a taste for something higher. So that is how bhakti works, by getting the taste for higher service of the Lord. So we develop the taste for hearing, we develop the taste for chanting, we develop the taste for remembering the pastimes of the Lord. And in this way, we dovetail our life. We perform our duty for the pleasure of the Lord. Everything we do it for the Lord. We eat prasadam, which is offered to the Lord. And in this way, we dovetail our consciousness, our life, our families, our house, our wealth, our activities, all for the pleasure of the Lord. Automatically, we can learn to renounce sense gratification very easily. It becomes easy to renounce at that time. So this is the secret. This is the advantage of bhakti over jnana process. Jnana process, you have to do it by meditation, control the mind through the prana, through the breathing. And in this way, it becomes very artificial, and still it is not steady. So many examples are there of such devotees of jnana who have fallen, like Vishwamitra, like Saubhari Muni. So many different sages are there. Whereas the bhakta never falls down, because the Lord says to him, I carry what you lack and I preserve what you have. That is the promise of the Lord to the devotees, right? Bhagavad Gita. So one can never become a yogi. So the point is, sense gratification, one must control the senses. So therefore, in devotee life, we practice the 4 regulative principles. No meat eating, right? No intoxication, no illicit sexual activity, the 4 pillars of dharma, right? So we follow that. So in this way, and we dedicate everything for the service of the Lord. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. So this is a person who can renounce and let go everything only when they come to this platform. Otherwise, they cannot renounce artificially. So one has to reach this level, and 2 ways to do it. One, by controlling the mind by pranayam and asanas, like the dhyana yogi, which is in chapter 6. The other process, the easier process, is by bhakti yoga. So one can easily come to this platform. So the true yogi, so therefore this 6.1 to 6.2, we talked about this aspect. Who is a true yogi, who is not? And then 6.3 all the way to 6.28, Krishna will describe the dhyana yoga process, the Ashtanga yoga. How one has to, there are do's and don'ts. One has to become a celibate. That means no sexual activity at all, cannot have a family. One has to leave. You want to do meditation, one cannot be in a family. One has to leave, go to a secluded place, in a holy place or a secluded place like the Himalayas, and over there perform very austere sense control, very austere meditation and all that. Step by step, one has to do it. So this is the dhyana yoga process. These details were all discussed in level 1, right? So some of the things, I'm just mentioning some of the verses here. For what's the point of all these things? The point is to control the mind. So one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached. So one can achieve the Paramatma when one conquers the mind. Because the mind can be a friend, can be also the worst enemy. With the help of the mind, one can control it and achieve the super soul, Paramatma. But the method prescribed in Dhyana Yoga is very difficult. And what happens after he has achieved the super soul? He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. So we can see that in the sage Raikwa, isn't it? So when the king brought so many material things and he gave it to him, the sage was not interested at all. He completely rejected all these things because he had a higher taste. Not only he was able to see everything equally, he was able to develop a higher taste. He was already attached to a higher taste. So all these things were like, nothing to him. So that is the true renunciation. One who is attached to a higher taste. So therefore, we talked about in 6.3 all the way to 6.28, chapter 6. It will first talk about the yoga ladder. You start from karma yoga, then jnana yoga, then leads to dhyana, meditation for the super soul, right? So Paramatma realization is even higher than Brahman realization, because one now understands that the Lord is a person and there is consciousness, supreme consciousness. Brahman, it is simply eternal. Whereas in Paramatma, there is eternal and there is also consciousness. So then understood the goal. What's the goal of this Ashtanga Yoga? 6.7, we already read, is to control the mind. And then the method of Ashtanga is deeply described from 6.10 all the way to 6.28. And that is what the sage Raikwa did. He followed, that's why this chapter 6 is glorification of this Dhyana Yoga. So sage Raikwa followed that method, but later he finally understood that the goal, because simply by, where does he learn this method? He learned this method in chapter 6 Bhagavad Gita. But first he memorized it, memorized the Bhagavad Gita, reciting. After reciting, he tried to practice. And after practicing so long with so much of austerity, he realized the Paramatma. And after that, he realized that the goal of this realizing the Paramatma is to again go back to bhakti, is to recite the Bhagavad Gita again. So therefore, he ended up, after doing all these things, he ended up again reciting the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6. So just like how the Maha went through Mathura and came to Kashmir, he missed out Mathura. So in the same way, this sage Raikwa missed out the bhakti in the beginning, but by special arrangement, he was able to recite the Bhagavad Gita. And in this way, after attaining Paramatma, he was guided towards bhakti again. And then he understood that this was the highest goal of this yoga realization. So, we saw first from Kashi, then went to Mathura, and then went to Kashmir, and then back to Vrindavan. So the ultimate is to attain bhakti. So it's such a difficult path, this Jnana Yoga. It's difficult, but possible. Yeah? The sage Raikwa did it. But Arjuna said, no, I don't think it's possible for me. I can control the wind, but to control my mind is very difficult. And that is true, especially in Kali Yuga. And this was in Dwapara Yuga, previous Yuga. Arjuna said it's difficult. Now this sage Raikwa was during the Treta Yuga, during Lord Ram's time. Right? That's why the fire sacrifices were the main Yuga Dharma at that time. So at that time, yes, a bit, because even Satya Yuga was the time for meditation, but sage Raikwa could still somehow do it. But in Dwapara Yuga, Arjuna said it's difficult for him, and in Kali Yuga, we can just imagine how much more difficult it is for all of us. So therefore, it's a difficult part, but it is possible for some rare souls. And even if there is failure, there is never a loss in yoga. They will simply continue from where they took from India next birth, after enjoying in heavenly planets and all that. And at last they reach me. So therefore 627, the yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. So who attains the highest perfection? The yogi whose mind is fixed on me, right? And me means on Krishna. Krishna is saying this. So therefore Bhagavan realization is the highest perfection of yoga. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So this is Krishna's promise. Krishna is always in the heart of such a yogi, and the yogi is always keeping Krishna in the heart. So that means the devotee, the pure devotee, the bhakti yogi is the highest. Such a yogi who engages in worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that I and the Supersoul are one. So Krishna is Paramatma and is the source of Paramatma, remains always in me in all circumstances. That means Krishna is always thinking of him, and the devotee is always thinking of the Lord as well. So Lord Krishna said, O mighty arm son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible. How? By suitable practice and by detachment. So this is also true for bhakti. In bhakti, we can also take this by suitable practice of bhakti. In the beginning, it's very difficult. We want to chant Hare Krishna, we want to offer the food, we want to, so many things, but it's so much easier still. It is practicable. It is something which is being able to do by grihasthas, people in household life. We can do these things. And at the same time, it gives the highest realization. So what a wonderful method, right? and by detachment. So how the detachment will come? So it will come by the grace of the Lord, by performing bhakti, and by hear. So bhakti is hearing, chanting. By doing these activities, the detachment will come automatically. So that is how this is described over here. And finally, when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, so sincerity is very important, right? No other desires in his heart. His main only desire is to attain the Lord, right? After being purified by so many contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection, after many, many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal. Now, this statement is for the dhyana path. So the dhyana path is very difficult, but possible. And then finally he says, they will at last attain me. Just like how the sage Raikwa at last attained the Supreme Lord. But you see, the king, Janashruti, was very fortunate. He did not have to go through the Ashtanga Yoga process. He didn't go through these many, many lifetimes. Look at the contrast. He simply surrendered to this Raikwa sage. And simply by taking advantage, though he be a materialistic king, being a householder and everything, right? He was able to take up this path of bhakti and attain the same goal which sage Raikwa attained simply by the path of bhakti in one lifetime, and that is also half a lifetime. So therefore, Krishna finally tells everybody, he tells Arjuna, be a yogi, right? Because why? The yogi is greater than the tapas. He gives a list here. The karmi is not very great. The jnani is greater than the karmi. One who is in knowledge is greater than the karmi. And a tapasvi, one who's performing austerities, is greater than the jnani because he is doing practical activity. But the yogi who knows the ultimate goal and performing all these things, he has knowledge, he performs austerities and all this, he is the greatest. So be a yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. In all circumstances, be a yogi. So this is our recommendation. And of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. So here Krishna is describing Bhakti Yogi, Bhakti Yoga. Of all yogis, the Bhakti Yogi, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So that is Krishna's opinion, the opinion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, we can understand this is the chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga. Okay, so it's 9:06 now. So let me just quickly go through practical spirituality. We have already covered the 4 topics of the 4, what do you call, pillars of Dharma. Remember, what are the 4 pillars of Dharma? It starts with Satyam. Satyam, then Saucham, Satyam, then Daya, then Saucham. Yes. Satyam, Saucham, Daya, and Tapah. Yes. So Satyam is truthfulness, Daya is mercy, Saucham is cleanliness, and Tapah is austerity. So the pillar of all these things is Satyam because it all begins with Satyam. But at the same time, everything can be found within Tapah because to do all the other things is also austerity. So one could say austerity is the root and Satyam is the strength. So that's why in Kali Yuga, in Satya Yuga, all 4 legs were there. And then slowly towards the end, the first thing to fall was Tapa. Because if Tapa didn't fall, nothing else can fall. So austerity was the first to fall. After austerity fell, then everything else became shaky. So because to perform, to compassion, all this ahimsa, truthfulness, all these things is part of austerity also. Cleanliness, all that. So then in Treta Yuga, the next thing to fall was Daya. The next thing to fall was Saucham, cleanliness. So because austerity fell, people cannot do meditation already. So then the method was fire sacrifice. But fire sacrifice, in order to perform fire sacrifice, one has to be very clean also. Saucham has to be there. So Saucham at the end of Treta Yuga, Saucham was gone. So after Saucham was, Daya went first. So when Daya went off, then one cannot perform fire sacrifice, because in those days, some of the fire sacrifice, they sacrifice animals. But these animal sacrifice were not the same as what is being done now. The animal actually is not killed. The animal, by the power of the mantra, the animal is put into the fire, and then it gets a human body immediately. So its elevation is brought higher. So sometimes they will put the cow or they will put the horse within the fire sacrifice. And the power of the Brahmanas could just light the fire by chanting mantras. They didn't need matchboxes and all that. So all this was done. But at the end of Treta Yuga, Daya or mercy was destroyed. So therefore, fire sacrifices were no longer the main thing, because now people were misusing fire sacrifices to simply kill animals. So there was no longer compassion or mercy. And then in Dwapara Yuga, so therefore what else was left? So therefore Saucham was still holding strong. So cleanliness was still there. So therefore temple worship was the main thing. In temple worship, one has to have very great cleanliness. One has to purify oneself, body, mind, right? With mantras, with water, with so many things. So therefore, temple worship was very elaborately done. Ingredients were pure. A lot of things were purely done. But in Kali Yuga, nothing is pure already. Saucham is also destroyed. So what else is left? Only Satyam is holding on. So therefore, Vak from speech. Therefore, chant Hare Krishna. So that is the Kali Yuga, the Kali Yuga, Yuga Dharma. At the same time, it is also the highest. It is the easiest to do. In fact, it is mentioned in scriptures that the Devatas, they are just waiting for Kali Yuga to come, because they are thinking that they also can take birth in the Kali Yuga and quickly purify themselves, very quickly. Because simply by chanting the holy names with a short period of lifetime, one can purify themselves. In Satya Yuga, it took hundreds of thousands of years to purify oneself with dhyana. In Treta Yuga, it took 10,000. You have to do so much of fire sacrifice. So like that, it takes a lot of time. Whereas in Kali Yuga, the process is the easiest, and at the same time, it gives the highest process. So we covered that already, and we talked about how Satyam is destroyed by gambling. Saucham is destroyed by illicit sexual activity. And Daya is destroyed by meat eating, killing of animals and all that. And Tapa is destroyed by intoxication, because to do austerity, one has to have control of the mind. So one takes intoxications, one loses control of the body, speech, and mind. So we talked about Tapa having three components, which is mind, speech, and body. So in one was someone, I think there was someone who asked how to answer the questions in the quiz. I asked, can we name one aspect of tapa, in the tapa of the austerity of the body, one example of austerity of the mind, one example of austerity of the speech. So we've covered this. So you just have to name one of it. So for example, austerity of the body. What are the austerities of the body? One is saucham, cleanliness. So to be clean, to cut our fingernails, to keep our hair short, to wake up in the morning, to bathe in cold water, all these things is austerity of the body. And like that, ahimsa is also another austerity of the body, not to cause harm, right? So one of these examples, I think there were 4 or 5, can't remember all of them. And then there's austerity of speech, austerity, simplicity, yeah, simplicity, to live simply. One austerity of the body is also arjavam. That means one does not need so many things to live. A simple house, simple setup, simple bed, simple room, simple food, simple desires. So keep things as simple as possible. So that is also austerity of the body. So then we have austerity of the speech. So speech, we remember the 5 filters, right? One is anudvega karam. One has to not agitate the mind of other people. And then the other one is satyam, truthfulness. Yeah. And then the other one is priyam, pleasing to the person. And then the 4th one was hitam, beneficial, right? And then the 5th one was, and that one is of the Vedas, right? Swad, I forgot the Sanskrit. Of the Vedas. That means we speak things which are in line with the scriptures. We don't speak contrary, right? So this is 5 things which austerity of the speech. So like that, one of them, one example would do. And then another austerity of the mind. So this one, one of it is gambira, gravity. Gravity means one is not, very not frolicsome or always very trivial in the behavior. One is serious when necessary. And then Maunam, yes, Maunam, correct. Thank you. And then the other one was simplicity of the mind also.
Sauyattam.
Samyattam, yes. I can't remember the Sanskrit. Let me check. Okay, mana prasada. That means satisfaction. Santosh, mana prasada. Satisfied, right? Not always hankering for something. I want this, I want that, I want better, I want better. No, satisfied with what is been given. Samyatam, okay, that's the one we mentioned. Maunam, gravity mentioned. Atma vinigraha, that is basically what do you call satisfaction of the mind in terms of the mind is peaceful. And then the last one is Baba Samsudev, that means purification, purification of the mind, to perform, to work, to do things which are purification to the mind and the activities. So like chanting and like doing the bhakti sevas and all that. It's all towards purification. So anyway, so today I wanted to talk about the other aspects of practical spirituality. So remember the 6 boats I mentioned, which will bring us back to this, which is basically the mercy of the Lord. So one of those is Vishnu Charanamrita and Mahaprasadam. So next time whenever we go to the temples of Lord Vishnu, please look for the Charanamrita. Ask the temple people to give you Charanamrita. Or when we go for any special, like recently we had Krishna Janmashtami, so they would do Abhishek for the Lord. So the Abhishek, the water of the Abhishek is extremely precious. It's the most precious commodity in the world. So one can take this, how we take it. So we take it, we put 3 drops in our finger, in our palm. We put our palm respectfully like this. We put 3, why 3 drops? Because we are very careful. We don't want the Charanamrita to drop on the floor. It's very dangerous if that happens. There's a special hell we go to if we do that. So there are some people who pour Charanamrita on the drain and all that. So that's very bad. So this is the mercy of the Lord. Simply by drinking this Charanamrita, one is purified so much. And we put it on our head. We don't even wash our hand after that. So we drink the Charanamrita through there's a special way to drink. We pour it in the middle like this. There's the picture. And then we drink it through this path. That means we put our lips here in our hand, like this. We sip it. This is called the Brahmarandra. So that way we sip. And it is said that our hand doesn't become contaminated when we sip like that. So we pour it here and we sip it through the mouth like this. And we put it on our head, on our hair. We wipe it on our hair because we don't wash off Charanamrita. We wipe it on our head. And then we wash our hands if we want. So that's the way to take Charanamrita. And in many temples, they will also have a prayer, a special prayer, Akala Mrityu Sharana Sarva Vyadhi Vinashanam. It is said that this Charanamrita can cure all kinds of diseases. So it depends on faith. Prabhupada's sister, she never took any medication in her life. She only relied on Charanamrita. Whenever she got sick, she will only take Charanamrita and then rely on that only. So it depends on our faith. Bhakti is very much proportionate to our faith. So if one can have Charanamrita, that's why for sick devotees, devotees who are sick and all that, or going to leave the body, or going to leave the world, we try to give Charanamrita to them. We bring Charanamrita to them and they drink it. And then it's very auspicious if they leave the body with Charanamrita in their mouth. So even for people who have left the body, if you have Charanamrita available, put it in their mouth when they have left their body before you cremate them. So it's very, very wonderful. So same thing with Mahaprasadam. So I wanted to mention a little bit about Mahaprasadam on practical aspects of how to offer Mahaprasadam. So this Charanamrita is basically water which has washed the lotus feet of the Lord. So that's what Charanamrita is. And Ganga is Charanamrita also. That's why Ganga is very popular. It actually emanated from the feet of the Lord, because the Lord poked the universe with his toe. There's a pastime. And from there, the water trickled and poured on his toe, washed his feet, and came down, dropped on Lord Shiva's head, so that the earth is not destroyed by the impact of the water. And then finally came as Ganga. So prasadam, so Mahaprasadam and prasadam. So how do we make prasadam? So devotees should eat prasadam as much as possible. Every day we should have prasadam. In fact, if possible, everything we eat should be prasadam. That is the highest standard. But sometimes, we are starting, so we may not reach that level. But we can begin by at least having prasadam every day in some form in our house. Even the water which we offer to the Lord is considered prasadam, but even better if we can offer food. So how do we do that? So we should have a special plate just for the Lord, right? And when we cook, it's called bhoga. Bhoga means to be enjoyed. So when we cook food, it's called bhoga. And this cooking, we have to cook in such a way that the food we should not taste. That means we should become expert eventually by cooking. Or sometimes if you're not expert, we can offer salt and sugar or lime or chili separately in a small plate for the Lord. And then later on, we can temper the food after it's offered. But in the beginning, but certainly sometimes we will make mistakes in the beginning. But expert cooks in the temples, in ISKCON temples, nobody tastes the food. Everything is perfectly cooked and the food comes out perfect by the grace of Krishna. And it said the food becomes even more tastier when offered to the Lord. So this is the secret of ISKCON food in temples all over the world. So we offer with love, right? So therefore, it means we don't taste the food when we are cooking. We cook with concentration, thinking that this is for the pleasure of the Lord. The mood is like that. The mood is we are doing this for the pleasure of the Lord. And we should use the first class best ingredients if possible. No compromise for the cooking of for the pleasure of the Lord. And then we offer them in a special plate. In this plate, this is called Krishna's plate. That means we don't eat from that plate. We don't let our saliva touch the plate. Same thing with cooking items also. So the cooking pots and everything, we don't let that means we don't directly eat from those pots. We can serve from those pots, but we must take care that the utensils, the spoons mustn't touch the plate which we are eating. So that the plate which we eat is called juta plate. Juta plate means it's like a saliva, with our saliva mixed and everything. So it's to be separated. The plates for the Lord, the pots for the Lord, and the plates for the eating. So when we offer, we should put a tulasi. So we should put one tulasi leaf in each offering. And then in this way, we should ring a bell and then offer to the Lord. We should put the plate in front of the Lord, put a tulasi leaf on each of it, and then ring the bell. And as we ring the bell, we should chant these prayers. So first, we request the spiritual master. So we can all take Prabhupada as our spiritual master initially, as a Siksha Guru, instructing spiritual master, and we can put his photo in the altar. So by his mercy, the food is offered, because we are not pure. So we have many contaminations, we have many mistakes. So by the mercy of the spiritual master, these contaminations are all forgiven. And it is like, the idea is we are serving our spiritual master for him to serve the food to the Supreme Lord. So like that, in that way, we chant this prayer 3 times. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale. This is called Prabhupada Pranati. So we say this entire prayer and then we repeat it 3 times while ringing the bell. So if you are free, we can read the translation of this prayer. One fine day, we can talk about the translation in detail. But for now, we should just understand the gist of the meaning, and we should chant this mantra 3 times. After chanting that mantra, then we chant this mantra. Now we offer it through Lord Chaitanya. So everything has to go through parampara. It has to go through the stage. So therefore, Lord Chaitanya, he is the merciful incarnation in Kali Yuga. By his mercy, we are able to please the Lord directly. So we chant this mantra. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratishve Namaha. O most munificent incarnation, you are Krishna himself, appearing as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You have assumed the golden color of Srimati Radharani, and you are widely distributing pure love of Krishna. We offer our respectful obeisance to you, to the most merciful. So we need the mercy of the Lord, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is known as the most merciful incarnation of the Lord. So by his mercy, so we say this prayer 3 times, ringing the bell, and then we say this prayer 3 times, the last one. Namo Brahmanyaya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagaditaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namah. My Lord, you are the well-wisher of the cows and the Brahmanas, and you are the well-wisher of the entire human society and world. So therefore, by his well-wishes, we get the mercy. So prasadam means mercy, mercy of Krishna. So therefore, we should honor prasadam in such consciousness. So like that, we ring the bell, we say this prayer 3 times. After that, if you have a curtain or if you have a door, you can close the door. Of course, you can light the lamp, you can put the dupa and all that if you want, but this is the bare minimum. And if you don't have a curtain and all that, it's okay. You can just leave the plate there for about 5 to 10 minutes. And after that, you open the door, the curtain, and you ring the bell again. And then you, in your mind, you ask the Lord to forgive any offenses. Yeah, it's important also while you're offering, you also mentally ask the Lord to please enjoy this offering that we are giving you, to please accept kindly. So you have to have that consciousness in the mind and request the Lord to do that. So then after you do that, then you take out, then after that you can offer you can transfer the food, now it is prasadam, into the other pots, because you might not have offered the whole full pot, you might have just offered one small plate. So you can just mix the prasadam with the rest of the pot. So then the whole pot becomes prasadam. So in this way we serve everybody. So in this way we can have prasadam every day. So with that, I'd like to end. It's now 9:26. Again, apologies for taking up too much time. Trying my best to shorten it, but always has a lot of things to say. So let's end with this. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna, thank you everyone for patiently listening. Let me see.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Are there any
Prabhu, the wordings of what you said before giving the prasadam, can you put that in writing in our app, in our group?
Yes, I'll do that. I'll send it to you, Prabhu.
Okay, the first, second, third, and they were told, you
Okay, Ken.
know. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Prabhu.
I'll also send a video, a short video. I think long time ago I sent, but I'll resend it. It'll, for those of you, in case they want to look through, the video will show everything what one needs to do. But anyway, I'll send the verdicts also, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu.
Haribol.
Thank you.
There's no questions in the chat. Anyone wants to ask anything before we close? No? Okay. So if there are no questions, then thank you so much for your time and for your listening pleasure. So we'll see you again next week. So
Thank you.
Haribol, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.